Hello and welcome everybody to this summary review of the pro workshop we had back in October on how we built a 2.5D level that is a sci-fi oriented level based on the video game Rochard that came out back in 2013. It was a really cool platformer that was built using Unity, and we wanted to create something kind of similar to it that can also be applied to our 2.5D platformer course that is available on our pro memberships if you look in our tutorial areas as well. So we're going to build this entire level using really only like 7 or 8 different assets that is available in Filebase, which is available to all pro members. And what Filebase is an amazing tool that we have created for Unity that is integrated inside of Unity. It doesn't use a zip file. It doesn't use an HTML, anything. It is embedded inside. You install it inside of Unity, and then once you do, you're able to build complex and interesting whatever game levels with it. And the only real restriction we have on it is that commercially, use it as much as you want, just do not redistribute our assets. So, Timmy, the first question you'll ask is, how do I download Filebase? Well, really simple. Go to GameDevHQ.com/Filebase after you create a free account and hit the download button for Filebase. Once you have installed the Unity.1.3.Unity package into your scene, import it all, then click Windows and choose Filebase. It'll ask you to run an update, which you'll need to, then close out the window again, reopen Filebase, and you should be set to go. You will have to log in to download anything, but you can use Filebase right now to browse around. And we got this brand new setup, this brand new display that shows all the cool stuff, the latest stuff that we have inside of Filebase. And take a moment to browse around. All of our assets are listed inside of Filebase. So if you want guns, if you want weapons, if you want characters or any of that sort, all you have to do is just click on it and you can just kind of hunt around. There's so many neat little things to find. And we build every one of these assets. We have a team of artists. We show them something that we want. They build it for us, and then we try to integrate it inside of Unity. And all of this comes into Unity in a specialized folder structure. So when you do import it, please try not to reassign or restructure the folders, because that can kind of screw things up a little bit and make it hard for Filebase to find the asset that needs to be updated. What also makes Filebase really cool, not only can you browse and find a different item, check out a thumbnail or multiple thumbnails to see what it looks like, but you can also use search terms and meta tags. So instead of typing in a particular building, you could just say city, and all the buildings will show up, including mailboxes and all the other good stuff that's available for those particular genres. In this instance, we are going to be searching for this asset called Sci-fi Floor 01 through 12. Some of our assets that are listed actually come in bundles, so it may be singular, or sometimes it can come up to 25, 50 items inside of one bundle. We try to make sure that our textures are spread along and are optimized, which is why we may stretch a texture onto multiple objects, since we're going to be burning through the material anyway. Once that's imported into your scene and you hit the locate button, you should be able to find the sci-fi floors inside your project folder structure. Now for this particular 2D element, we're going to be using a lot of prefabs. So we're just going to look for a good floor element, a good floor piece that we can use as the base of one of our floor structures. And then we're going to combine this with a bunch of different pieces and build these prefabs so we can have these huge sections to add into this custom-wise for our 2D level. Once we found that Sci-fi Floor 03, we're just going to drop it into scene. Next, we're going to go search and download the Sci-fi Walls 05 through 07. We're going to want to add some depth to this platform. It's not just a flat piece. And you can see the Sci-fi in the search browser inside of Filebase, or you could just type in Sci-fi and you'll be able to find it. We'll drop in Sci-fi Walls 05. Now, once we do have this in scene, we are going to use these wall elements as floors to extend our platform. Remember that a 2.5D game is really a 3D game with a kind of a 2D locked perspective camera. So we still need to take into account that because it's a 3D game, we want to add that depth. We want to make sure that it has that depth so there is a parallax as your player crosses the screen. Now I am holding the V key as in Victor so that I can snap to the corner of my asset to one other asset so that it's a perfect one-to-one match for the wall to the floor. And then from there, I'm just going to duplicate that floor again. And I'm going to stretch this floor a little further back into Z depth. And now we got a nice long platform that we could look down and we can get that sense of scale in this particular item. Next, I'm going to grab a Sci-fi floor 11, and it's a shorter rectangular piece, but I want it to be that front bridge that everyone sees on the Sci-fi platform. But it is a little small, so we're going to have to do a slight adjustment to it to make it fit the platform. I'm simply going to snap to vertex to the front of this particular element, and then I'm just going to scale the size of the platform so that it looks like it kind of just fits right at the front of this thing. Once I have done that, I'm going to go ahead and drop in Sci-fi floor 04. Then I'm going to just place it and rotate it, and I want to create a sort of angular element so that this thing, even though it has no real mass and depth, it looks like it does. So using the vertex scale again, I'm just going to kind of mish and mash this thing together so we get this nice little angle treatment on this platform. Now we do have a rail system that we are adding into Filebase, but I kind of needed to cheat this because I haven't uploaded it yet. So by simply taking the Sci-fi floor 12, I can take this asset and create a fake sort of railing system. I'm going to use a capsule as sort of a reference to see the height of where this railing will be. And literally just I'm going to squish down this rail, duplicate it again so I can kind of create the pillar on which it supports itself onto. And this will be my rail system that is embedded into this particular prefab. Once I've created that, I make sure I duplicate that rail and place it at the back of my prefab so we can have the railings going at the front and back of this platform. Again, another cool use of adding depth to this piece. Now what I would like to do is create a prefab folder inside of my project. And the reason why you create a prefab folder is now this particular asset can be duplicated multiple times, and if we need to update it, we simply can just by updating the first prefab. I'll show you a little bit more in a bit. But so we'll create an empty object, game object inside the hierarchy, and you want to make sure you zero this out. It's really just an important thing to do. Then you're going to rename your game object. In this case, I'm going to call this platform 01. And then I'm going to grab all my sci-fi assets minus the capsule and drop it inside of platform 01. Then drag platform 01 into the platform folder. Now we have just created our first prefab. And anytime we adjust platform 01 and we apply the change to all the other platforms, these changes will occur automatically. We don't have to worry about going and individually changing each and every segment anymore. I'm going to go ahead and move the first platform 1 over to the side, and we're going to create a second platform so we can have some variation, but we're going to use the exact same techniques. So we're going to drop in a Sci-fi floor 5, and then we're also going to drop in some Sci-fi walls, and we'll drop in duplicate the railings and send that over, and we'll duplicate the front areas, but we're just going to use different materials. So even though it's the same overall structure, we're using different 3D elements that are scaled the same. And now we're going to have two platform variants, and it's really going to help us sail this very complicated, very interesting looking level. Now that we've got those elements together, let's go ahead and create another empty game object called Platform 2. Make sure, of course, you reset the Platform 2 empty game object to 000, and then add that into your prefabs folder. So now we will have two prefabs of floors that are similar but very different. Now what we will do is use the vertex snap to snap the two platforms together. This also is a great opportunity to make sure that our rails are matching in width as well. Now go ahead and duplicate these platforms, and we can now stitch these together pretty much the same exact way. Now you see how our rails are slightly off. They just a slight adjustment that needs to be made. This is really neat. Go ahead and select your rail system, move it into position, and then instead of adjusting the other rail, just go to the top right of the inspector panel and choose override for your particular prefab and apply all. And now all of the rails will be adjusted. Let's go ahead and do this with the same ones in the rear of the platform as well. Now we're going to need to create a corner element for our platform. So I'm just going to duplicate platform 01 as a prefab, and I'm going to create a new prefab off this old prefab. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a new sci-fi wall element. I'm going to place this into the scene, and I'm going to position it so that we know it sits on the edge, the side, and in particular, the right side of this platform. Now, you don't have to get super accurate with this because the viewer themselves, they're not going to see this from any other perspective than a 2D camera. So we can get a little sloppy and nobody is going to know that, no one's going to know any better. We'll also fill in the rest of the wall on the back end, and we're just going to add some additional depth elements so that it kind of goes all the way to the base of this particular corner piece. Once you have that laid in, we're also going to want to adjust the rail system so that the rails end at the corner, but there's still an area for where our player can actually walk out of and run through this section. So we're going to duplicate these rails, and we're just going to try to make sure that they match closely to the end piece. Once that's complete, we're going to create an empty game object. Of course, make sure you reset the value, and then we're going to call this platform R, or platform right. Then we want to grab the assets that are on the side and place them underneath. We also want to make sure that we grab the assets from platform 02. Now once you have that, go ahead and stitch that together, and we should have a corner piece to our 2D platformer. Then we're going to duplicate that 2D platformer and call this platform L. And we want to move this onto the left side. instead of rebuilding the whole thing, how about we just set the scale to a -1? That way, it just simply inverts everything on the x-axis. And then we'll just go ahead and snap that to our other platform. And there you go. We have our first platform in our game. Let's go ahead and make sure we set these as prefabs as well. So we want to add some extra detail. So I downloaded the Sci-fi lights 05 through 08. And I'm going to add those to the base of our platforms, but not all of them. I want them to offset, and I want to only stick them in platform 1. So I identified which one is platform 1 through the outline, and I'm going to set those at the base of my platform. I'm just going to go ahead and slide those directly up. And it doesn't have to be perfect. We're just adding some sci-fi detail and scale. But it is a good idea to make sure that it's pretty close to even. And then we're going to go ahead and click on Platform 1, Overrides, and Apply All. And you see how we automatically added the lights to all the other elements that are Platform 1. But, slight mistake, is that we have a corner element that is using Platform 1, which is the Platform L. So what we may do is go ahead and delete one of the platforms and then move Platform L over so that it's a nice even setup. But we're also going to create variations of sizes of platforms. So there's going to be some longer ones and there's going to be some shorter ones. Go ahead and create an empty game object. Zero that out and call this platform small. And we're going to create a couple variations, but this particular variation is going to be our small platform. And we'll take these platforms, center them up, and then drop them into our platform small game object. And we're going to turn that platform small game object into a new prefab. So go ahead and grab the platform and drop that into the platform area under the prefab folder. Now let's go ahead and duplicate this small platform, and we're going to go ahead and unpack this particular platform. That way we can make edits to it and not have to adjust the original platform. From here, we're going to take our right platform, move it out a little, take our left platform, move it out a little. Now, because we still see the other small platform, we're just going to turn that off for right now. And we're going to duplicate these center pieces so that we can extend out this platform a little bit and make it a little bit larger. And we're just going to snap that together, just like we did prior. Once that's finished, we're going to go ahead and grab our caps, and we're going to set those at our edges. Now that we have our renamed medium platform, go ahead and add that to our prefabs folder. Now you can see the two platforms side by side for a comparison, where we unpack our medium platform, and we're going to call this large, and we're going to extend this even further. Now you can see the comparison in sizes between all three platforms. And make sure that you keep all three platforms inside your prefab folder. From here, go to your 2D view, clicking on the Axis tabs, and we could start doing some level layout. So simply grab these assets that you think will fit into what would work for your buildings or walls, and start placing them throughout your scene. A handy little tip that I would recommend is create a 3D object cube and scale it to either as a wall or as a platform, and you can use it as kind of like a blocking guide for your level. It's a really quick way to kind of lay things out for yourself so you know where assets are going to be and what scales they need to be at. Now that we've blocked out some of our platforms, let's go ahead and build a modular wall segment. So we're going to go ahead and grab Sci-fi Wall 07, and we're going to place this right underneath our platforms. We're just going to go ahead and grab these same elements, rotating them, and if you hold the control button, you can snap to 15-degree segments as you press the rotate. And we're just going to try to merge them into a nice flow, placing them inside of this particular scene. Once we've added in the extra wall elements to kind of extend this wall section out, let's go ahead and add a sublayer to it. So it's not just one repeated pattern over and over again, but it looks like it's two repeated patterns. And for this, we're going to go to our sci-fi floors again, and we're going to go ahead and grab one of these longer, thinner elements. So for this instance, we're going to grab sci-fi wall 06, or sci-fi floor 06. Just going to go ahead and drag it down, rotate them, and place them into our wall segments. So we have this nice rectangular spacer in between these large metal walls loaded with pipes. We're also going to fill out this corner piece by using Sci-Fi Wall 08. And in this instance, it's off just a little bit, so we're probably going to stretch it just so that it fits into this particular element properly. And we're going to use vertex snapping to make sure that those all connect together. Let's also add the edging around the corners using the same black material. And we have some sections here that are obviously you could see that they're disjointed. So we're going to grab some smaller sections and kind of stack those on top to kind of hide the edge that we kind of see right here, so that it kind of evenly blends out and disguises the fact that we're stitching two different game object sections together. And so it looks a little more cohesive and intentional. Once we've done that, go ahead and create another game object that's empty, reset the position, and we're going to want to drag all those assets underneath. First, let's rename this. Let's call this wall L, so we know it's the left side wall. And we're going to grab all those elements that compose this left side wall. Make sure we center it up closer to 0, 0, 0, and we'll just drop those into wall L. And then from here, make sure we turn this into a prefab. And then we're also going to want to make sure that we separate our floors from our walls. It'll just make navigation a little bit easier. And we'll duplicate the wall L, and we're going to unpack it and do the same trick we did with the floors, where we turn this to a wall R, and then we set the X scale to a -1. Then we're going to just go ahead and start lining those areas that we did the quick blocking on with this new wall prefab. And we'll also make sure that our platforms are connected, and if we need to, we'll make some adjustments. Then we'll drop in our wall R, which is our prefab, and we will place that accordingly. From here, you should be able to line up your prefabs for the walls based on where the blocking is to fill out the rest of the scene. We now run into an interesting scenario. We need a ceiling. So how do we do that? We're just going to take our wall and flip it upside down. Or not upside down, but actually on an axis. And then we can even go as far as to create additional wall prefabs. So you may have a small ceiling and you may have a large ceiling that may compose 3 of these together, so you don't have to continuously duplicate the same ones over and over again. It's really up to you. Once you're done laying in all the walls and the ceilings, your new level should look something sort of like this. Now, I did do a block out of the rest of the level, so I kind of know what to build from here. And let's just go ahead and grab our platforms and our walls and our ceiling elements, and let's just go ahead and stack those right where the blocking says it should go. And don't be worried about adjusting it a little bit to make sure your prefabs fit. That is totally okay. But the blocking is just merely a guide to make sure that your level design is exactly what you wanted. Now that we've gotten all our platforms and our walls together, let's create an empty 3D game object. And we're simply going to call this main level. And we're going to grab all these prefabs and we're going to drop them underneath main level. This will do a couple things. It will make sure that we can set things to static if we need to, but also it'll make sure that we keep our hierarchy clean so whoever comes on it next, whether it be the programmer or another artist, knows that all those assets are located in that folder. Next thing we're going to want to do is create our background, and we need to really make sure that our background scales huge and is large. So we're going to use our Sci-fi Floor 04, and we're going to create some background walls. We're going to take that Sci-fi 04 and we're going to connect that to our Sci-fi Floor 02. We'll also just duplicate this Sci-fi Floor 04 again, rotate it so that now we have this nice little matching pattern in our background walls. Go ahead and drop this under a game object and call this rear wall and make it a prefab. We want to do that simply because we want to make sure we can duplicate this over and over again. Then turn on your main level and we're going to grab our main wall and we're going to set this to the back of our scene. And we're going to scale it drastically. And we're going to use this to kind of create an interesting wall shape in the background with these elevator shaft kind of things going on. So really that whole section in the background are only 6 assets that are repeated. So we got rear wall and rear wall 1. If we unpack this prefab, we can literally drop these assets inside the other prefab and then do a override. And now all our rear walls are this large using the same assets. Next, we're going to go ahead and start building out our rear wall section. Again, trying to make these interesting elevator shafts that can do some really fun light tricks. But more than anything, we just want these large assets in the back so we can create that sense of parallax for our 2.5D scene. Since we've created the shape of our rear walls, we also know that this rear wall isn't quite long enough. So we're actually going to want to stretch this out even further so that the viewer never sees the top or bottom of the rear wall, which is pretty easy. All we have to do is kind of the same technique we did before and update our prefab, and we shouldn't have any issues, and all of our other rear wall prefabs will adjust accordingly. There you go. Now we're going to add in an elevator prefab wall. It's primarily just another prefab that was composed of several elements with a light piece placed into it. Very similar to what we've done in other elements so far. And we're going to set this at the back of this column, and we're going to create a column shaft, an elevator shaft that goes up. Part of the fun part of this level is we're going to have an operational elevator that will move the player up and down. So we want to make sure that our elevator shaft looks a little different than the other assets in the scene. It's kind of obvious that it is an elevator. So all we really have to do is grab it and just connect them over and over again, going vertically upwards. Once that is complete, we are going to take one of our platforms and we're going to use this as an elevator shaft. So this particular element right here, we're just going to rename it from a platform to an elevator shaft. Jumping into lighting, one of the first things we're going to want to do is we're going to want to really bring down the directional light. We don't really need it as intensely as it is already. And we want to create a new skybox. So all you have to do is create a new material, and under shader, choose skybox procedural and drop that into your light settings. Once you do that, you'll be able to adjust your exposures into your scene. So you notice that we have very little directional light and very little light coming from our ambience of our background, which is kind of what we're looking for, because we want to make the lighting occur through spotlights in our scene. So let's go ahead and create some, not spotlights, point lights. So we're going to create a point light, drop it into scene, and we want to position it correctly so that it really does illuminate everything we need it to illuminate. And we're going to increase the intensity quite a bit so that these point lights are going to be the items that really illuminate this entire section. From here, we're going to add additional point lights where we know we need lighting, and we're going to adjust the color temperatures of them. Some are going to be warm, some are going to be cold. But in doing so, we're going to add that extra level of, I guess, just detail. Instead of just having flat one colored light throughout, you can add some greens, you can add some blues, some magentas, things like that, and it really just kind of pulls the scene together, and it makes each individual element look unique. After we've placed all our lights in our scene, we need to add some fog. The reason why is it's going to make those background elements less saturated than our foreground elements, and it's going to really make it easier for the player to navigate through the scene. But the background elements are still going to look good. So following our reference of Rochard, we're going to turn the color of our fog to, I don't know, maybe something tannish. And we're also going to adjust the density of our fog so that it's not so strong. Once we do that, we're going to create a spotlight. And these spotlights, the only purpose they serve are to highlight those elevator shafts. So it makes certain background elements seem a lot more impressive in the background than it would be normally. With the spotlights in place, I would suggest adjusting the angle of the spotlight and also adjusting the intensity and the range so they show up a little bit better in your scene. Once you get that nailed down, I would adjust the fog color to a more bluish, and then you could even add a bluish tint to some of your lights so that it doesn't necessarily fight with each other. Once that is all created, you're going to want to create an empty game object, and you want to create a post-processing game object that's just going to be empty. And you're going to download the post-processing package manual, and inside of post-processing, or this asset, you're going to import the post-processing component, volume component, into this game object. Then create a post-processing profile, call it what you need to, and make sure that that post-processing is set to the proper one. Then you're going to want to add the post-process layer to the main camera, which is what is going to identify the post-process. Then we need to create in the post-processing game object a post-processing layer. So go ahead to layer, add layer, and set that to post-processing. And then in your main camera, you want to set your layer to post-processing. Now, whatever you change in the post-processing game object will look correctly. It will adjust in your main camera. So now we're just going to adjust some things as far as post-processing goes. Color temperatures, we're going to adjust occlusions, we're going to adjust all that good stuff so that the blooms, so that it really, everything looks beautiful. One of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the exposure I also want to adjust the color temperature to something a little more colder. I'm going to jump to my light settings and add a little more fog so that this thing really starts to bounce. We can also adjust the saturation and the contrast a little bit. Now we're going to want to add the bloom effect to our post-processing. And that's really going to help, especially with the lights. If you notice that the brighter we set the intensity, the more those lights in our scene start to really come out, and it really makes a beautiful effect, and it definitely sells that whole sci-fi theme. Now we're going to adjust our light settings in our GI. We don't really need these many samples in our GI light setting, just because we're not really bouncing light in our scene. But we do want to set things static. So I'm going to take my direct samples down to, let's say, 8, and the indirect samples to 100. I'm really going to reduce these settings. Then I'm going to click on the main level and set it and all its children to static. This will cause my scene to bake, but because I drastically reduced the amount of light settings, it's going to make my bake go extremely fast. And if you want, and you have a good enough GPU, you can actually set your rendering of your light map settings to progressive GPU over progressive CPU. Well, I hope you found this tutorial to be quite informative, and it showed you a couple things that you can do to build a 2D level, 2.5D level using Filebase assets from GDHQ. I also hope it showed you a little bit about how Filebase operates and gets you really excited about building video games using Filebase, this system that we built exclusively for Unity and exclusively so that you guys can easily build levels and video games quickly. Now, for those of you who are brand new or this is your first time seeing GDHQ, welcome. How about you go on over to GameDevHQ.com and sign up for a free account. And as a special bonus for doing that, we will give you a free 15-minute course about how to build a zombie first-person shooter. You could see more about that on our channel of what you will be creating, and the assets that you use are yours to keep commercially. Enjoy them, use them, have fun with them. If you want to learn more about the Pro membership, it's an amazing deal. It gives you access to all of our authorized streaming content for Unity and all the additional bundles that go with it. We continually update them first, so we have brand new courses available on our streaming platform at GDHQ. You also get complete access to Filebase. This includes all the 3D models, the 2D models, the sound effects, the everything that we have to build commercially for your video games. We want you guys to be making video games, and we're trying to bring you a product that will give you the ability to do it. Finally, we also have brand new content that comes up every week. We do game jams, we do summits, we do so many things, and we have an extremely active Discord channel. So if you're interested in talking to someone, I would head on over there. We don't have to sell you a single thing. We know our members love our product and they will vouch for us 100%. So if you're curious about it and you want to talk to someone, just hop on over and ask them a question, and they'll be glad to help you. This is one of the many pro summits, pro workshops that we do. These are live events. So if you want to attend, sign up for GDHQ. You'll start getting a mailer every week. On that weekly mailer will be an invitation. You just log into it and leave your email, and we will then have you on a schedule. And the hour before the actual event occurs, you will get notified that, hey, we're about to go live. So that way we can all connect with each other, ask us live questions. You know, this entire event probably took maybe 3 days to do, and we've compressed it down to about 40 minutes. So there's a lot of things that we went over that we probably did not discuss in this video. But if you can make a live one, excellent. If you did manage to get this far and watch it, thank you so much. This is Al speaking for John. This is GameDevHQ. We're out of here. Have a great day. We'll see you next week.